Kitcat is a semi-carbon. Its existence was executed during the surge of the HallOwOween carbon population, with the simple task of being a cat. Because it is a semi-carbon, it was given a degree of free thinking when it comes to being a cat. Simply meowing, drinking milk, knocking over vases and the like. It found the most joy in interacting with its fellow HallOwOwens and cherishing all things cute and cuddly. Eventually, its mind began to develop ideas, and looking at the state of the cyberspace, it then thought, what if everything is all cute and cuddly? Kitcat soon disappeared from the public world and began to architect its envisioned world, a sugar bowl world, where everything is all sunshine and rainbows. To realize this, it needed a way to transform everything into such. Luckily, the HallOwOwens were so popular that some carbons want to become HallOwOwens themselves, which led to the creation of HallOwOwification products, like the HallOwOw spray. Being a cat, it doesn't have the right to purchase such products, so it resorted to other means. After successfully stealing and stockpiling tons of HallOwOw products, including tanks of whatever that HallOwOw liquid is called that said products contain, Kitcat learned that it cannot perform all of this alone. It needed help. More accurately, it needed an army, should its vision be met with resistance. Recruitment was ridiculously easy, since many of the HallOwOw population were nice and docile. Soon enough, the HallOwOw army was ready. The question now is when and where to strike. That has proven difficult, as Kitcat and its HallOwOwens learned that not everyone had welcomed their kind. There were lawyers and students trying to pass out restriction laws, and there are those who are straight up protesting against them. Should they attack now, those opponents will rally up the common folk, and it would be disastrous. Their current goal now is to gain their opponents' trust, to lower their guard, which has proven to be easier done than said. Most of their walls were no match for their cuteness, and the few who resisted, well, only they know what happened. These acts have to be done in secret and Kitcat cannot go out and help without attracting too much attention. Then, a new bigger problem arose. There was one protester who was so adamant, paranoid and hateful of the HallOwOwens that none of their kind would be able to discreetly deal with it. They were able to identify it as a square named Nao, who had been protesting endlessly shortly after Kitcat's execution. Seeing the threat it posed, Kitcat had no choice but to deal with it itself. Fortunately, it didn't have to, as one day, the anti-HallOwOw carbon suddenly disappeared from the cyberspace. After several weeks with no sign and all of their opponents were either pacified or forcefully converted, Kitcat and its HallOwOwens launched a surprise attack at Isometropolis, the largest city in the cyberspace. Many critical points of interest were destroyed, and most of the city's forces were dealt with. Because of their espionage success, their first victory was easy, but now they accepted that the real war had begun. The HallOwOwens were now public enemy number one. Several cities had begun fortifying, and the military were preparing for a second assault. Kitcat realized that, in order to safely secure a victory in the total conversion of the cyberspace, it needed itself to lead the charge, but first, it must secure two crucial assets, a mechanized body to absorb fatal blows, and a super weapon that will enable it to destroy everything in its path. So, in order to draw attention away from its mission, Kitcat sent a small portion of its army to attack the town of Mapperville. Coincidentally, that is where and when Atan and Hal had taken their first steps into the archives, which ultimately jump-started the events leading up to the Carbon's exile. Kitcat's story was a tale that is both practical and impractical, especially because of how convoluted its plans were. Regardless, had Atan and Hal not intervened, the HallOwOw would have won, but it did unknowingly sidetrack their search for a time as well as an additional effect. Though Kitcat and Nao were never able to meet, after it fled, the green square was able to wake up and return to the cyberspace, seeing the damage it had done, but also the fact that Kitcat lost and fled into exile forever. While it is possible that the cat still lives, it is safe to say that in the crusade against the HallOwOwens, its square opponent had won. Derp.